All right. Okay. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up the logging config. Okay. So in config directory, just go to logging config. Okay. And see, this is important, right? Because this is basically the central logging setup. Okay. For your entire project. Okay. Let me just increase the font. I think this is better. Yeah. So this is the central logging config, or the central logging for the entire project. Okay, you talk about every single module, right, which is every agent, every API router, every ingestion file imports from this one function that we're going to build, and it calls in the same way. Okay, so this means that every log line across the entire system looks identical. Okay, what problem are we trying to solve? Why are we even building this logging config? See, without centralized logging, every developer sets up logging differently. Let me write it here. Without centralized logging, okay, every developer is going to set up the logging differently. Okay, so for example, some might use a print statement, right? Or some might use logging.basic config kind of stuff. Okay, now the result in this case is inconsistent, right? Because certain logs might have timestamp, certain logs might not have timestamp. Okay, some show the module name, some don't show the module name. Okay, and when we have central logging, it kinds of solves this, right? And every log, okay, what we're going to do is every log will basically look uniform. Okay, somewhat like it will have a timestamp followed by the log level info. Okay, followed by which file it came from. Okay, and followed by the message, right? Roughly this is how it will look like, right? So let us build it. Okay, so I'm just going to say import logging. Okay, logging is a built-in Python logging library. Okay, what does it give you? It basically gives you the logging levels, right? Log levels, it can be debug, info, it should be caps, yeah, info, then warning, this should be also caps. Okay, info, warning, error, critical, etc, etc. Okay, these are just log levels. Okay, for example, we use info for normal operations, warning is typically used for non-fatal issues, error is used for failures, and debug is it's basically two verbose for production. Yeah, after this I'm just going to say import sys. Okay, and basically we're going to use the sys.stdout, right, which is the standard output stream at the terminal. Okay, so now what we do is we are going to write all the logs to stdout. Okay, so the Cloud Run captures them automatically. Okay, so we are going to write all the logs to stdout. Okay, so the Cloud Run captures them automatically. Okay, what will happen is my Cloud Run will read the stdout and send it to my Cloud Run. I'll write it here. My Cloud Run, okay, reads the stdout, standard output stream. Okay, stdout is standard output stream, and it sends it to what? It sends it to Google Cloud Logging. Okay, I'm very bad with spellings these days. Yeah, and so no log files needed, right? And Cloud Run is going to handle that storage for us. Okay, so once we have set up these two files, let us create a function called as setup logging. Okay, and this basically takes the name and gives something called as logging.logger. Okay, so now what is getting done here? Okay, so it basically creates and returns a configured logger for a given module. Okay, so this function is called at the top of every Python file. So this function is called at the top of every Python file in this particular pipeline. Okay, each file will get its own logger. Okay, will get its own logger, okay, which is namespaced to that file path. All right, this means that the log lines show exactly which file generated them. This means log lines will show which file generated them. All right, now if you look at the argument, at the argument level we are passing name. Okay, name is if you are aware, underscore name underscore, right? It's a Python built-in library, right? I'm sure you are aware of that. Okay, that is what gets passed here. Okay, and what does it return? It basically returns a carefully configured logger that is ready to use. Okay, logging is a part of your pipeline. Okay, so make sure you are comfortable with logger and stuff. Now when I'm building this pipeline, I'm already considering you guys know about logging modules, about basics of LangGraph, etc. Okay, this project is typically not meant for you guys to learn from scratch. I'm considering you are aiming the intermediate advanced level. Okay, now here get logger name. Okay, this either creates a new logger or returns the existing one. Either creates a new logger or returns an existing one. Cool. And yeah, so for example, if you call setup logging agents.supervisor, let's say you're calling the supervisor agent. Okay, and let's say you're calling the supervisor agent twice. Okay, so you get back the same logger object, not two separate ones. Okay, and this prevents from duplicating the log lines. Okay, so I'll just here say if logger dot handlers, okay, return logger. Okay, so if this logger already has handlers attached, it is already configured and return immediately without adding more handlers. That is what it typically means. Okay, all right, and here I'll just say logger dot set level. Okay, and I'll just say logging dot info. Logging dot info. Okay, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to set the minimum log level. Okay, set minimum log level to info. Okay, right, cool. And now let us define the handler. Okay, so I'll just say handler equals to logging dot stream handler, and I'll just say std dot std out. Okay, so stream handler sends the log lines to the stream. Okay, stream handler sends log lines to the stream. Okay, and if you again thinking what is sys.std out, it means send to the terminal, standard output. Okay, this means send the output send them to the terminal, log lines to the terminal, which is the standard output. Okay, and this is typically the right choice that we are doing for the Google Cloud Run. Okay, because Cloud Run automatically captures everything. Okay, cool. And after defining the handler, we are also going to define the formatter. Okay, so I'll just say formatter equals to logging dot formatter. Okay, I'm going to set the FMT to in fact I have it, I'll directly take it from the documentation itself. Yeah, so just give me a minute. All right, okay, now if you look here closely, okay, what is FMT? Basically FMT controls how each log line is formatted. Okay, and if you want to break down each part, look at this part. Okay, this is basically the timestamp. Okay, timestamp which is formatted by the date by the date format that you have defined below, right? For example, how the output of this is going to be, let me write it here. Okay, for example, okay, if I have to break it down, the output of this is going to be something like, let's say 2024, okay, 2024 followed by the month, followed by the date, followed by the timestamp. Okay, this is typically how the output is going to look like following this particular format. Okay, all right, then you have level name, which is the log level, right? If you see, it is left aligned to 8 characters, right? 8s typically means you pad with the spaces to fill up the 8 characters, right? And then name, which is nothing but the logger name, which is the module path, right? For example, the module path is ingestion.clinical trials client. Okay, if you see ingestion, so in ingestion you have clinical trials, right? Clinical trials client, right? So that becomes what? That is your module path, right? And that is what will be captured here with the help of logger name. And this tells us exactly which file has logged this particular line in the code. Okay, and then you have message or messages, which is the actual message that you pass to logger.info. For example, let's say you are passing the actual message to logger.info as, let's say, fetching studies or fetching research papers related to diabetes. Okay, as simple as that. Cool. All right, now in timestamp, we are excluding milliseconds. Okay, I just want it to be simpler, so I'm excluding milliseconds. If you want, you can include, but it's not going to add a lot of value. Okay, then I'm just going to say handler.set formatter. Okay, and I'm going to pass in the formatter here. Okay, so what we are going to do is we're going to attach the formatter to the handler. Okay, and then the handler now knows how to format each line before printing it. So the handler now knows how to format each line before printing, right? So this is just some basic hygiene setup, guys. Okay, that we are doing. Okay, and then I'll just say logger dot add handler, and again I'll just pass in handler here. Okay, so what am I doing? I am attaching the handler to the logger. Okay, so now when you call logger.info, it flows through logger, then handler, then formatter, then std out, then terminal. Okay, so I'll just say now when you call, let's say logger.info, and for example there is something here. Okay, how does it flows? Okay, it flows something like from logger, it will go to handler, then it will go to formatter, then it will go to std out, and then finally to the terminal. Okay, and then I'll just say logger.propagate equals to false. Okay, so propagate basically controls whether the log messages travel up to the root logger after being handled here. Okay, when we are going to set it to false, it basically stops that propagation. Okay, and without this, every log line should print twice, once from our handler and once from the Python's root logger. Okay, again I'm saying, if you're not comfortable with logging, I would just request you to watch some few videos around logger library. Okay, and what do we finally return? We return logger. Okay, looks good. Yeah, that's all. That is how we have just set up a simple logging config. Okay, nothing else. Okay, cool, looks good. Now let's go to in the next video, just how we have set up the logging config. We will set up settings.py. And what is settings.py? You can imagine settings.py as one single source of truth for all the configuration. Every environment variable, the system that will be needing, your entire pipeline that will be needing, okay, is going to be defined here. Okay, it's going to be validated and it's going to be accessible from a single object. Okay, all right, so let's build the settings.py file now.